Hi, I'm Chike Coleman, and welcome back to another edition of Real Reviews Rewind, the show where we rewind the time a little bit and go back to older movies that we're a fan of. This week, I decided to torture my good friend Sanford Hess with yet another musical because I just felt like it. It's spring. I wanted something happy. Brigadoon, the last movie, while it had a happy ending, wasn't really that joyous and in its third act.
The whole movie is pretty joyous. It was my reaction that was not joyous.
Well, your reaction can be understood. So the first movie I want to talk about today is a movie from 2003, directed by Todd Graff, and that is Camp. Stars Daniel Laterre. We also have a very young Anna Kendrick, a woman who had some notoriety after the film was released, Sasha Allen. And basically the premise is all these amazing nerds and geeky people at summer camp for what we're not sure is the last time. We don't really get that impression. It's just another year at musical summer camp. And the reason I love this film, I saw the trailer for this film on the IFC channel because I had it back then in the mid-2000s, and I was just spellbound because it wasn't a musical in the sense that every 5 minutes somebody randomly starts singing. They're interspersed in a way that I think is not forceful and in a way clever, but you've also got this really deep story involving acceptance, identity, learning who you are, appreciating who you are, appreciating what makes you different, what makes you special, and they do it in a way that isn't preachy. It's kind of, in my opinion, normal, or at least friendly in a way that says, we're not subjecting you to understand what this is like. We're showing you what it would be like from this person's point of view. And I think that's why I come back to that film year after year. There's also a really fun, I want to call, well, I guess he is, alcoholic composer.
Fun alcoholic composer, yes.
I know those two phrases aren't supposed to be juxtaposed together, but that's kind of what he is, really. He's a washed-up alcoholic composer who happens to be a kind of fun person at a certain point in the film. And I really feel like this is a powerful story with a very powerful message, with actors who are not professional, who do a damn fine job at what they're given. Sanford, what did you think of Camp?
I hated this movie.
Really?
Yes.
Okay, go for it.
I only watched it out of my friendship to you.
I appreciate that.
Yes.
Tell me why you hated it.
Oh my gosh. Well, my problem really fundamentally is the lack of production value of this movie. I mean, I'm not saying that every movie has to be made with, huge, high-paid cast and production values off the charts, but if you're going to ask me to sit and watch, not you, but if a movie production house is going to ask me to sit and watch a 2-hour movie, at least make it watchable. Everything about the way it was shot, it was clearly the guy who directed this movie had never really directed a picture before. Mm-hmm. There was nothing engaging about watching this movie. And the cast, who you mentioned, I mean, I think to their benefit, yes, they're kind of unknowns, but to the detriment, there's a lot of very bad acting here. And yeah, they're high school kids, and I'm going to give them a pass. And I will say that Anna Kendrick is amazing in this movie. I mean, even
for the few minutes she's got.
For the few minutes she's in it, and even besides her big musical number, the few scenes that she's in, she nails it in a way that nobody else in this movie nails. But for example, Jill, the blonde girl with whom Anna Kendrick has all her scenes, is horrendous.
Worst archetype ever. I will give you that.
Yeah, and the cliches of the characters are just off the charts. I mean, Michael, probably one of the two main characters, I guess you could say. I felt like his character was painted, was about that thin in terms of depth. And Vlad, the other one, I mean, God, his character was horrendous. I mean, everything about his character just made me cringe. Especially, I thought, the sort of final scene with Michael. I felt like that was one of the cruelest things I've ever seen, and yet, at the end, they just kind of all laugh it off and go swimming. And I'm giving away the ending. I'm sorry about that. But I just...
You didn't really. You didn't say what the whole connection with that was. Right. And if, with your permission, at some point I would like to spoil that for our viewers.
That's fine. Go for spoil it.
So here's the thing. When I first saw this, and every time I come back to it, I still end up feeling a little bit bad for Michael knowing the beginning.
Okay.
The actual opening song and how we're introduced to the characters. Now, let me say that we're introduced to the characters in the most clumsy way possible. I get that.
Yes, we're all back at camp this year. Hey, you're my new roommate.
Not even that. The little split vignettes of what each character is doing at any given time. Yeah. I feel like they drew that out a little far for me, but I definitely identified with Michael. You know, the kid who doesn't fit in, the kid who does get kicked in the crotch for, you know, cross-dressing to his own prom, which, by the way, if you want to do, you should feel free to do. But I just felt that outsider feel from him. And what Vlad puts him through is straight up despicable. It's like, here's a lollipop. Nope, you don't. You can't have it. Here's a lollipop. Nope, you can't have it.
Yeah.
And I found that really despicable. Like, what was supposed to make us like this guy? Is it because he had, what was it, ADHD?
Oh, he had OCD. I mean,
OCD, yeah. Mathematical
okay, so let's explain for our viewing audience. So Vlad shows up on the scene at this drama camp, and he's new to this idea of a drama camp. He was in one play. He is a good-looking sort of sport kid who was in one play because he thought a girl was cute and he wanted to be in it. And then he liked acting because he liked the attention. So here he is, this one good-looking hetero, maybe, boy at drama camp who becomes everybody's crush. All the girls have, you know, a crush on him. The boys have a crush on him. And here's Vlad just kind of cruising through it all. And he's for his character flaw, because for some reason they feel like they have to give him one flaw, he proclaims that he's OCD because he adds up the numbers of the letters and words. Yeah. Which became this like relatively long, drawn out explanation that even then I didn't follow. But I mean, I get it. It's just that of all the ways to give this character some depth, this sort of strange OCD thing was a very weird choice and didn't come off. It didn't make me relate to the character at all, have any empathy for him beyond anything else. I still have no empathy for him. And I just have one fundamental question. Why hit on everyone? Why hit on everyone? There's a character, I mentioned the actress earlier, Sasha Allen's character of Dee. Yes. Why didn't they do more with her? You know, there's so many characters who were underrepresented. So they start off, there's 4 roommates. By about halfway through the movie, you don't see the other 2 roommates anymore. One of them seemed to be in a walker early in the movie, and then that gets dropped. He's not in a walker anymore. Yeah, that didn't make any sense to me. There's also a very tiny kid. There's a tiny kid who, all we know about him is that he doesn't like sports. And he doesn't really... there's the blonde kid who doesn't like sports, but there's also the kid with the glasses. Oh, yeah, the real young one, yeah, which you're like, he's kind of young to be there. And then, you know, he doesn't have any confidence, but he sort of learns to tap dance, but you don't really see it anymore until they show you the deleted scene on the DVD that you have to actually look for to find, where they flesh out, he doesn't feel confident in himself, but as soon as the teacher starts dancing with him on the night of the show... Oh. See, that, yeah. And there were other characters that were dropped completely. Early in the movie, there was one girl who was kind of she was, you know, a little obese. Never appeared again. That's true. You know, so it's just, you know, to me that just goes back to the sort of quality of the film. Think this through a little more. I mean, if you're going, I was watching the end credits kind of have some interspersed songs, so I was sort of watching through I was fast forwarding the end credits, but there's a lot of end credits, and I'm like, oh my God, there's a lot of people who worked on this movie. Surely some of them have worked on other professional films and could have given some suggestions about better development of characters. I watched the movie wanting to care about the characters, but I really couldn't. The only character I felt like I could really care about a little bit was Ellen. See, this is what I'm surprised by. Yeah? I don't see why you should care about Ellen. Explain this to me. Why do you care about her? I care about Ellen because she starts the movie as sort of a little bit of a overlooked kind of person.
Yeah.
Then you think, oh, there's going to be a dynamic between her and Vlad, and then that kind of gets shot through. She gets rubbed around in the dirt some more by Vlad and from other people, and then there's not really a resolution to the conflict until... Yeah, and then honestly, from a conflict perspective, this movie had no sort of second act conflict.
Yeah.
It just kind of went along, and then all of a sudden, oh, Vlad's girlfriend shows up. That's conflict. Then she gets dropped. Oh, we broke up. And then there's this sort of weird scene at the end. I just, to me, there was a lot of opportunity here to have a dramatic interplay, because, hello, these are thespians.
Yeah.
But it didn't happen. Now, the musical numbers. Let's talk about that for a sec. The musical numbers weren't bad. They mostly take place on a stage as staged musical numbers that they're putting on as a review. Probably the strongest two musical numbers, I would say, first of all, was the opening number, which does not take place on a stage, which kind of confused me at first until I sort of figured out what they were doing.
Well, they do explain that during the reveal of his OCD.
So it was kind of I mean, that was kind of a fantasy scene, but I liked that scene. I thought that was a good way to introduce the characters. And then I think the other strong musical number...
Please say it.
Well, besides the Anna Kendrick one, was the, and I don't remember her name, but the girl who had her jaw wired shut.
Tiffany Taylor is her name.
Yeah, her big song, to her parents. It was very over the top and blatant, but it was well delivered, and that story actually packed some emotional punch because they had properly set it up with her dynamic with her parents. They wanted her jaw wired shut because they wanted her to lose weight. And then here, right before the big scene, which the whole thing, that was completely fake, with the guy coming out with the wire clippers to, like he's going to stick those in her mouth. Forget about that.
Yeah.
But
hygiene.
But the idea that she was then had this big song and it emotionally impacted her dad and he finally understood, that had some resonance. It was a little cheesy, but it had some resonance.
So I want to go through a couple things really quickly as fast as I can because I know we have another movie to get to.
Yes.
The reason I don't like Ellen is she has no personal agency. She's really just kind of waiting for everybody to do everything for her to get that connection with Vlad to go. I feel like she doesn't work hard enough to be herself to, push Vlad into normally liking her in an organic way. Two, we also learn through 5 seconds of dialogue, but still 5 seconds of corny, cheesy dialogue, that her parents are douchebags.
Yeah, yeah.
You think you're not the prettiest one?
Her dad tells her she's not pretty, and
you're not even the prettiest one in your class.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And she has a fabulous voice.
She does.
So, I mean, but I mean, to me, I'm not going to, I don't fault the character, I don't fault the actress, I fault the writer and the director who did not give enough of a story for her to play to.
Camp is what I like to call a guilty pleasure.
Okay.
You watch it for the musical numbers, and you watch it for the characters that you think, oh, these characters are kind of engaging in a weird way because they remind me of my times at summer camp.
So now we're getting to Chike's personal connection to this movie.
There's a nostalgia factor there for me a bit, but also it's one of those movies where you ask someone, have they seen Camp? And you hear the word, yes, I have. And you start recounting scenes. It's kind of like The Fifth Element, where if you have heard of the movie, you probably pretty much love it. And if you haven't heard of the movie, you're curious about what in the world is this person obsessing over. And then you see it, and either it makes sense to you and you like it, or in your case, it's not a pleasurable experience that you want to relive at any point in your life ever.
I will not be rewatching this movie.
I don't blame you because the problems you point out are valid. Yeah. But it doesn't decrease from my enjoyment of hearing Anna Kendrick sing and absolutely smash The Ladies Who Lunch.
Yeah.
And it doesn't...
At like 13 years old or whatever she was at the time.
She was like 12.
Oh my gosh.
And she was phenomenal. That's how you knew that one actress was going places.
Yes.
You kind of hoped Ellen would go places.
I agreed. I looked up afterwards. I said, well, what else has she been in? And the answer is nothing.
Yeah. However, the guy Vlad
Yeah.
has been in stuff.
Yeah.
And I was like,
He was all right.
How is that possible? And the D girl that I mentioned, Sasha Allen, was on The Voice.
Yeah.
But really nothing else.
Yeah.
And that's I think the biggest tragedy of this film. The actors that were semi-strong deserve to have moved on to bigger things. And
Actually, I saw that the actor who was Michael had a relatively decent stage run in different parts and and was Tony nominated for a couple things. So, again, I think he was, to me, probably one of the more fully realized characters, despite the lack of a script that was given to him, which is basically his parents don't like that he's gay, and he wants to basically leave home and start his life, but he's still only 15 or 16.
And I think that has an emotional resonance for things around that time, for how people may have felt at that time.
Right. Well, I mean, that's true. The movie is 15 years old now.
Yeah, so things don't apply that did apply then, and apply now that didn't apply then.
Yeah.
So that's another angle of it. But I think we've talked this thing into the ground.
So no more musicals for March?
No more musicals for March. I put you through enough. Yeah, he is so happy right now.
Paying my dues.
Okay, so the next movie that I wanted to talk about that I love is Asghar Farhadi's The Salesman. And I can't give too much away here with the plot. Let's just say it's a husband and wife act who are performing Arthur Miller's Death of a Salesman. And they're having a normal, no, I take that back. They're not having a normal life. Something happened to them previous to the main plot of the story that is kind of huge that's never really addressed.
Well, they don't need to. I mean, the building they were in was kind of collapsing.
Yeah.
So they had to evacuate their building. Again, I like this movie too. So I'll give that away right now.
Okay.
I think this movie does a great job starting off.
Yeah.
Because the movie opens and all of a sudden, the characters are being woken out of bed. Oh my gosh, the building's collapsing. They never explain why it's collapsing.
Yeah.
It's collapsing. So they have to evacuate, and then that sets the events of the movie in motion.
True.
Which is a great way to open a movie.
True. So the other thing is that while performing this play, you can tell that the husband and wife sort of get along. Do you want to give it that much credit or no?
Well, they're a married couple. I mean, I think I would say that being a married person, they have a realistic relationship.
I watch how your face and your tone of lyrics there kind of just was cascading on
My
the ice
wife
of
might
not
watch
getting
this.
yourself in trouble with your wife, which I think is hilarious. So
they're a realistic couple. They're not. I mean, first of all, they theoretically work together also because he besides being in this performance of Death of a Salesman, he also is a teacher at the school. She doesn't have another career. But
yes.
This is, it's set in modern day Tehran. So it's not unexpected that she would not have a career.
Agreed.
So they work together. They live together. They've just been through a relatively traumatic event. They have to move out of this apartment that they clearly enjoy. So again, yes, they have a sort of
normal
on and off
couple dynamic.
Yeah.
So essentially, something happens which we can't quite give away.
Right.
And it throws into chaos the entire relationship, in the sense that one person wants to do one thing, and then the other half of the couple wants to do another thing.
Right.
And then throughout the movie, you kind of see them flip-flop to each other's point of view a little bit.
I don't know about that.
I think...
Tell me how you think that what changes?
There are a couple moments during that, not initially, but later on, once they're still moving through what happened, where she's kind of like, well, it might make sense to do this, but I'm really not. She's on the fence, essentially, through part of the movie.
Right.
And
let's say this. A traumatic event happens to Reina, the wife.
Reina, the wife.
A traumatic event happens to her at the apartment that they're living in.
Yes.
So, she is mortified by it,
Yes.
clearly, because, and I think this is something that is subtle and is important to understand for anybody who watches this film, is that, you know, you have to keep in mind the Muslim sort of the headscarf and the demure way that she lives her lifestyle, which is, well, she just wears the headscarf. Sorry, the hijab. Sorry, thank you, Ethan. That it's one of those things that you know, she's not really comfortable with what's happened because it was sort of humiliating for her.
Yes, but it's also humiliating for him.
And it's humiliating for him, and at the same time, as a man, he's dealing with his feelings of anger and revenge and all of the things that you would expect someone to go through if someone that they loved had something happen to them.
Right, and we know from what we see that he wants justice, and the whole movie is about how they grapple with that within each other, separate from each other. How in the world do they move forward? And this movie is phenomenal.
Yeah.
It's the best acted film I saw that year, the best written film I saw that year. There is no hiding behind anything. Everything feels organic and natural, and the anger you feel from both sides parties makes sense. You don't know which side to really lean toward because you're starting to understand the culture, and thus you're understanding what the decorum is within that dynamic, and it makes for fascinating watching. And in the end, once you get whatever resolution there is, you're still questioning, well, would I have gone that route, or would I have been more subdued about, you know, the actions I took? I'm curious, what side of the coin would you have landed on this if you were in the same situation? Which,
well,
God forbid, you ever have to be in that situation.
Right. I think that, you know, it's a movie, so they're always going to take sort of extreme actions because that's where the dramatic conflict occurs. Mm-hmm. I think he puts himself and, you know, everything at great risk with the step that he takes.
Agreed.
I think they're logical steps, and I somewhat understand why he doesn't go the sort of safer route of, you know, contacting the police and trying to let them deal with the situation. But yeah, I can't say that I would take all those same steps because he puts himself at great risk.
Yeah.
And I think that leads to, you know, an exciting climax. But at the same time, it's one of those things that it's not realistic that, you know, people would really do what he did. Now,
They would be seen at some point doing what they did.
Yeah,
That's my only sticking point, is he would have been seen.
Yeah. Now, I'd like to talk about this. One of my favorite parts of this movie is the fact of the way it intertwines with the Death of a Salesman performance that they're doing. Because there are scenes from the play, that small snippets from the play that echo themes of what's going on in the movie. And there are parts, and they do it in sort of just the right sequence, you know, where there's parts where they use what's going on the stage to heighten the dramatic, you know, contact that's going on between the characters. So there's a scene, for example, where he's playing against his wife on stage, and she sort of breaks character and runs off, and that heightens the fact that they're in a disconnect mode outside of the play.
Yeah.
And then later there's the other one where he's sort of angry at his landlord, who's also in the play.
Yeah.
And I thought that played really well.
That was my favorite scene of the entire movie.
Yeah, and I even thought that the very sort of early scene they showed where they're rehearsing the play, and the woman who has the small kid kind of storms off the set, I thought that heightened very well because it played up the theme of what it's like to be a single mother in Tehran, which helps you understand the character that they introduced, the sort of the character you never see, who's also a single mother, you know, dealing with these situations. So I just really enjoyed the way that interplay back and forth. I thought that was fabulous.
So do you want to take a moment to spoil what happens to the character, and then we can talk about what that made us feel briefly?
Spoil the ending?
No, not the ending.
Okay.
The actual thing that happens to Raina.
Oh. I think, yeah, I don't think that's a huge thing. I mean, basically, somebody comes into their apartment because they're looking for the former occupant of the apartment that they're in, and it's not entirely clear. And I kind of like that they kept it sort of vague.
They kept it vague for a while.
Yeah, but it's not entirely clear how she got injured. But
no, that bit's not clear. No.
Yeah, but she essentially hurt. I mean, she was hurt. She fell or was thrown. It's not clear. And cut her head. Not critically bad, but bad enough that she had to go to the hospital and probably get stitches. And so, that's the part you want to...
I actually interpreted that more as that she was assaulted and then thrown.
Well, again, they're not specific. I mean, at different points of the movie, different characters relate it in different ways.
That's true, and that's also what makes it such a fascinating watch.
Right. Which I like that vagueness. I mean, sometimes movies, it's like, hey, get your act together. Sometimes vagueness is a good thing because it's more realistic that different people have different takes on the same situation.
Indeed. So is this a film that you would recommend people see, or would you...
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I think this movie won the Oscar 2017.
Yeah.
I didn't see it at the time, so I'm seeing it late. I think it's a really great opportunity to see other country cinema. I would say this: I wish before I watched this movie that I had watched Death of a Salesman.
Yeah, so that would have helped.
So maybe that's my recommendation. There is to. Take in any of the many fine performances of Death of a Salesman or read the play. Familiarize yourself with that a little bit because...
Otherwise, it's going to feel disjointed, which kind of felt that way for me because I also had not seen Death of a Salesman.
Yeah.
And still have not to this very moment. But I really... these are two films that personally connected with me. Mostly from the point of view for The Salesman, the cultural... differences that I found fascinating and how it made me feel. It's one of those movies that makes you want to cry out in the middle of the theater. You should do this. It's very simple to, not like horror movie cry out like he's over no. It's more like I feel bad for you. I want to help you. I want to hug you.
Yeah.
Those sorts of things.
Characters making bad decisions in movies is... Well, you got to have that because otherwise there's no drama sometimes.
It's a good life learning tool and a life valuing tool, that movie. And that's kind of why I chose it. Too bad you didn't feel the same way about Camp.
Now, here's an interesting thing. Both movies are about groups of thespians.
Oh, well...
I was watching The Salesman thinking, oh, Chike he's got it on another level here.
Yeah,
tying that between these two films.
I wasn't even thinking about that, really.
Yeah, I mean, in both movies, they're putting on a show.
They really are, so, in many respects, in dual ways, which is also amazing.
So it's a very yin yang double feature if you're up to it.
Yeah.
But, on balance, I'm going to say if you only have time for one movie and not the other, The Stranger gets my nod.
You mean
The Salesman? The Salesman.
The Stranger's a horror movie, which I can't bear to watch.
And the Camus book, but yeah.
Yeah. I would say if you had to choose one or the other, go for the one that's going to be most out of your comfort zone.
Ooh.
If the idea of looking at another culture and the plot of that disturbs you, watch The Salesman. If you really hate musicals but want to try something different and see how Anna Kendrick got her start, go with Camp. But above all, enjoy our show. We'll be back in 2 weeks with our next episode of Real Reviews Rewind. I'm Chike Coleman, and that is Sanford Hess, and we will see you at the movies. Bye, guys.